Hey everybody, welcome back to the K2N Online Paddle School. We are back here on YouTube, and this week we're going to break down how to properly sit in a Surfski bucket, configure the foot plate to match your movement, and overall understanding how our seated orientation dictates our ability to take a paddle stroke. Looking at the seated orientation, we're going to start from the bucket, work our way to the hump and where our knees are located in the boat, and ultimately to our foot on the foot plate, and understanding the interaction of our lower body in this setting and how to utilize our tool properly. It is very easy to mismanage our lower body's usage within the inside of a Surfski without direct and clear advice on how to approach it. If you try to wing it, it seems very counterintuitive unless you learn very specific motion. There are also designs in the Surfski that are for situations that many paddlers may never experience, especially when they are learning initially. And this learning phase sets up very poor habits that follow us for the rest of our paddling career. Many users in a Surfski seldom or rarely take their boat into a surfing scenario. Especially in the US, most of the paddlers that I interact with on the K2NOnlinePaddleSchool.com are flat water exclusive paddlers. So there is an inherent design within a Surfski bucket that should not be engaged in flat water. This design is the back of the bucket's edge and shape. In a surfing scenario, the nose is going to go down into the water as the wave behind you rises up. Many designs of the boat are geared for this moment. High volume in the nose, the rudder's distance from the tail, the length of the rudder. There's a lot of shapes that are designed for that specific moment in navigating surfing a wave. As the tail rises behind you and the nose goes into the water, the nose can purl. The way to minimize this purling effect is by leaning back into the Surfski like a bobsled. Backrest there is very ergonomic to help you get into good position to keep the nose up. Where this can be abused is in flat water when your boat is oriented for flat water paddling. This becomes a very ergonomic backrest. As we're sitting, our hips are oriented posterior, but everything we're trying to do is in front of us. Tilting the hips in this direction, but getting our shoulders over the hips is going to automatically curve my back. So as we begin taking paddle stroke, paddlers will have a back that looks like so. This is very common because there is no way to keep good posture with the hips oriented in this direction. The only way to do that would be to keep the back like so, and you would be leaning facing the sun. The other issue with this is as I am leaned back like this, my legs will be extended very far out. There are many paddlers that are in a height range that are engaging the entire length of their foot plate. Using good posture, your legs will end up much closer to you as your hips begin being tilted under you. You can see my legs and my toes are out so far. If I tilt my hips posterior, you can see how much further out my legs are. I can sit in a conventional Surfski and max out the foot plate if I lean back far enough. This leads to a lot of issues, but one of the primary ones is feeling like your Surfski is not long enough for you because you're doing everything in your power to extend your feet further in front of you by essentially laying in your boat. So if you're distance flat water paddling, you never want to lean back and engage this. You want to tuck your hips under you and try to sit where your shoulders, spine are all over your hips like so. Sitting with your hips under you gives you more upright posture, which helps with your leverages throughout the stroke. The higher up you can sit with your torso, the more leverage you have with your upper body taking a stroke. Next orientation that we want to clarify is what are we doing with our knees and what is the effect on the rest of our body within the Surfski's bucket. Common guide on where do I put my foot plate and what is my knee orientation is using your fists to be under the hump of the boat, in the middle of the cockpit, and the back of your knees. Having this spacing here allows the opportunity for your legs to move. This tip in general is very good for a lot of people to make sure that their legs are not overextended like so or too close to them in this direction. Ultimately, it is seldom that it is exactly a fist, but this is a general good guide to work from. Understanding what we're trying to do in the boat will allow you to get the leg position here ideal for you specifically. Everybody is going to be different with how much their legs move based on how much their hips move. The whole point of your knees being up is this spacing allows space for the hip to move like so. So you can see how high my knees are as I go through this motion back and forth. Why my knees can move so much is because my hips are pushing into the knee to create this space. If I don't move my hips, my legs can only move so much. So if you're paddling in your boat and your legs are mostly extended and you go through leg drive that looks something like this, it just means that your hips are not moving at all. Using your hips is turning your hips and almost jamming the knee as far as you can go back and forth. You want to feel an end point of leverage because your hip can't move anymore. Now the knee cannot move anymore in conjunction to that. This rotation is very important because as I do that, my left hip comes forward and my right hip comes back and I'm pivoting within the bucket of the Surfski. It is smooth by design to allow you to rotate. Constantly on this channel, I talk about the steering wheel dynamic. When we're driving with the steering wheel, we don't push it up and down and back and forth. It only pivots in one spot, right? It is a circle, and we only encompass that circle. The Surfski bucket is a circle, and as we are in it, we want to encompass it like the steering wheel. If we move our body up and down, we will run out of space within the bucket. So what will happen with paddlers is as this leg extends, you're pushing off of the foot plate, so all the joints will move back into the boat here. Your hip will eventually hit the back part of the bucket, and you have two fixed locations that you can now push on with a little bit more knee extension here. As this leg begins getting leverage for extending, as the hip and foot are blocked, you can find hundreds of pounds of pressure here. And if you're strong enough, you can literally break your foot plate by pushing it forward. The back of the molding of your boat likely will not give, but the mechanism of the foot plate will, and you can bust it by pushing improperly. If you're doing your leg drive correctly, when this leg extends, this hip is going to rotate, not move back. It will not find the leverage and max out its distance behind. It will only turn. You will only have a little bit of pressure on the foot plate in relation to having hundreds of pounds of force by pushing incorrectly. So if you're doing your leg drive and it feels like your quadricep is going to explode because you have 3,000 pounds of pressure here, you are in danger of destroying your boat. Moving properly mitigates that pressure and allows you to go through that motion much more seamlessly. Power that we're trying to get in the stroke comes from the success of fluid motion, not from grinding and moving improperly and potentially damaging our gear. Everyone's foot plate orientation is going to differ a little bit, even if you have two paddlers that have the same exact leg length, torso length, even if they're the same skill level. How they find comfort in their seated position may be different to personal preference. Understanding this, your foot plate will move back and forth depending on what kind of paddling you're doing or where you are in your paddling career. You just want to mitigate leaning back and being in a position like so and not having adequate leg drive and being in a terrible posture position. Sitting with the hips under us and understanding how much knee motion we can utilize to engage the hips properly within the bucket. This is going to now steer us towards having a foot plate in the proper position. If you're paddling for very long distances, having a level of comfort pays dividends over the long term. So being in a slightly posterior position may pay off. But if you are paddling in a high stakes sprinting situation, these comforts and luxuries come at the cost of your speed leverages. Giving up the things that make you fast to make yourself comfortable is only efficient when we're looking at hours and hours of paddling. You're only paddling a few miles, right? Try to suck it up and sit properly so you can maximize your leverages and your movements much better. To a position of leaning back and paddling like this, if you're just recreational paddling, there's nothing wrong with this, but when we're looking at proper paddling and improper paddling, this position is never as strong as being in a position that looks something like this. So that's it for this week's video. Sit properly, utilize your legs and hips to their maximum, and ultimately you'll paddle faster. On the K2NOnlinePaddleSchool.com, we have our Surfski educational videos broken into 3 parts. The foundational series is for beginners that are getting into their first boat or they're very new to the sport. We cover all of these ideas and more at greater length on the website within those series. From there, taking that information to our developmental and mastery series helps build and compound these ideas to match your skill level. Understanding the basics of the boat and what we're trying to achieve with our equipment, then we can understand what to do with our body and ultimately use technique that maximizes these ideas. If you are just trying to wing it, you will hopefully figure it out in a much longer time period, but don't leave it to chance. Finding a coach that can help you with all of your questions directly to make you a better paddler, that is what the K2NOnlinePaddleSchool.com is for. Thank you all so much for checking out the video, and we will see you all next week for our next paddle tip.